Interesting. All right, good take on that. Oh, see, we have some people joining us today. Hi, Sana. All right, let's see. We have another question. It says, my sister believes we are in the tribulation as she refutes the rapture belief. How can I best respond to her?
Okay. Well, I have a document that I wrote years ago. I mean, probably 30 years ago, because I was asked this question so much. I finally just wrote down, I wrote it a long time ago, like in my early 30s. I think it's called The 19 Reasons Which Support the Rapture. And I could probably unearth that document and send that to anybody if they wanted to read it. It's 19 biblical reasons why there is a rapture, which in my estimation refutes the other view that there is not a rapture. So she believes we're in the rapture. We've been what? We're in the middle.
She believes we are in the tribulation.
No, I mean you could not be in the. And this is a really lengthy answer, but you couldn't be in the tribulation for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is in Daniel 9:24-27, Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks. Those 70 weeks represented 490 years, because each prophetic week represented a 7-year cycle in Jewish thinking. And it was prophesied that the Messiah would be cut off between the 69th and the 70th week. And Christ did die 483 years after the prophecy was given to Daniel. Then he died and was cut off, and then the 69th week stopped. The 70th week is the week of judgment, which is a 7-year cycle. So I told you this wasn't going to be simple. So thinking is since the first 69 weeks, 483 prophetic years were literal years that were fulfilled, the 70th week of Daniel is also by definition a literal 7-year period with a break in between them, which is the church age. Okay. And the point being, the time of trouble, according to Jesus, and in the Olivet Discourse in Matthew chapter 24 and in chapter 25, the time of the judgment, the apocalypse, is not for the church, it's for Israel. And he states it as such. It's known as a time of Jacob's trouble, not the time of the church's trouble. So why in the world would the church be here when it is for Israel? It's not for the church. Follow?
Okay. Did you follow, ladies?
Okay. It can't be for the church. The other thing is, in the book of Revelation, in chapters 2-3, Christ is pictured as the great high priest. And then chapter 4 and 5, John is taken into the throne of heaven before the tribulation actually begins. And he sees that Christ is the only one that's able to open the seven-sealed scroll of judgment that starts the tribulation. When that tribulation begins, it's in chapter 6. So you have a seven-sealed scroll, which is the title deed to the earth, which once Christ opens it, he begins to reclaim the title deed to the earth that was lost to mankind back in the Garden of Eden. Those 7 judgments, there's 7 seals. The 7th of each judgment begins the first of the next judgment, and they happen chronologically. And so the 7th seal, when Christ pops it open, brings in the first trumpet judgment. The 7th trumpet judgment brings in the first of the bowl judgments. They all happen sequentially, and they all happen, they're compounded as they go along. And so it's like it gets more intense as it goes along to the final appearance of Christ. Here's the point. It's a time of Jacob's trouble. The judgments happen sequentially, and it lists exactly what they are and what happens during them. So if you go and look at the six seal judgments, there is no way that the magnitude of those judgments have occurred yet. It's impossible. So like the coronavirus is bad, and it is globally, but it comes nowhere near anything that is calculated in the judgments that are listed in Revelation, the 21 judgments. Because you're talking about, some of them, you're losing a third of the Earth's population dies. So I counted it up one time. Basically, all of Europe will be dead. That's how many people. So there's no way we've seen pestilence and plague to that magnitude because we're not in that period yet. The other thing is the whole concept of the tribulation with God dealing with Israel. The whole tribulation starts with the signing of the peace treaty with Israel between the Antichrist and Israel. That has not happened yet. Therefore, we're not in the tribulation. because it's stated that's how this thing commences. And Daniel prophesied this. And so nobody has signed a peace treaty with Israel to create a worldwide peace from a 10-nation confederation. That has not happened yet. That could happen, but when that happens, you have the beginning of the commencement of the tribulation. The other thing is, in the tribulation, since at the time of Israel's judgment for their rejection of the Messiah, the church is not present. So in the book of Revelation, chapters 4 through 19, once John is taken up into heaven to see the throne room of God, and then sees Jesus take the title deed to the earth with the scroll judgments, when the judgments begin in chapter 6, from chapter 6 to chapter 19, the word ecclesia, church, never appears again. It only appears in chapters 2 to 3 of Christ's messages to the churches. Reason why it's not appearing in chapters 6 through 19, those contain the 21 judgments of God dealing with the wicked and with Israel, not the church. So the only time you see the church appear again is when Christ returns at the end of the tribulation in the second coming with the church behind him. And it says that those who come with him are arrayed in white raiment. The only people that wear white raiment in the book of Revelation are the people of the church, believers. Therefore, we're coming back with him. The other thing is, I don't know how much of an answer you want. There's way more to this, but there's in John chapter 14 verses 1 to 6, Jesus said, don't let your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have not told you so. I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may be also. What we have here in John chapter 14 is it's a description of the groom going to prepare his abode for his wife. The wife, biblically, is the church. That we are going to be wed to Christ when we see him. This all matches perfectly with the timing of the tribulation and why the church can't be here. Because when the groom comes for his church, he comes to deliver us and to be wed to him. And in Jewish terminology, it was a 7-day period which the marriage took place, which matches perfectly with the 7-year tribulation. Because while the Lord is judging the earth, he is being wedded to his church in the heavenlies, where we're enjoying the marriage feast of the Lamb, becoming his bride. And then at the end of a Jewish marriage ceremony that lasted 7 days is when the wife is brought out of hiding with the husband who's consummated the marriage. After 7 days of festivities, she is then presented to the wedding party after 7 days as, this is my beloved bride. That's Jesus presenting the church to the world at the end of the tribulation when he says, these are my people. And so we can't be down here while he's dealing with Israel. Another thing is, in Revelation chapter 7, the tribulation begins with him sealing 12,000 Jews from the 12 tribes of Israel. He's not dealing with the church. He's dealing with Israel. So therefore, we're not around to behold what that is. 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18, Paul talks about the rapture of the church. If you draw a chart and show the difference between the rapture of the church and the second coming of Christ, they're radically different. In the rapture, we are caught up, according to 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18, we're caught up into the air to be with Christ. In the second coming, and Jesus never touches the planet. In the second coming, Jesus comes down, and according to Zechariah chapter 14, his feet touch the Mount of Olives, and he lands on earth, and we're behind him. So Paul is right that there's a radical difference between the rapture of the church, the snatching away to be in heaven, to be wedded to Christ, and then the second coming of Christ, where he actually comes down to earth. They're two totally different things. And then in 1 Thessalonians 5, after the rapture passage, Paul says to the believers in Thessalonica, we are not destined for wrath. The wrath. What wrath? Well, the apocalyptic wrath that John foretells. But anyway, these are just some of the 19 reasons as to why.
So Alice, when you ask how can you best respond to her, maybe, would you like to come to Burke with me on Sunday? Might be a good answer.
And there's much more to that particular answer. So that's a thumbnail sketch.